Lamelo Ball receives a ton of love, but with that comes a ton of hate. A lot of people don't like his father, and because of that, they attack Melo in certain ways, or they generally just don't like Lamelo Ball. But here's the thing. Lamelo is his own individual person, so whether or not you like his father, that's one thing, but it's a whole different thing to not like Lamelo just because of the other people in his family. His dad is doing an incredible job building a platform for all of his sons in case things don't work out in the NBA, and it's not necessarily that he doesn't believe in his sons, it's just the fact that you never know what could happen in life because one day everything you have can be gone in a flash. Look at 2002 second overall pick Jay Williams. After his rookie year, he got into an accident and would never play in the NBA ever again, and because of that, you see him on TV very often because he has to work because that rookie contract's not going to give him enough money for the rest of his life to be set. And because of that, LeVar did a great job getting his sons great revenue streams. That way, if their NBA careers don't live up to the hype and they don't get a second contract, they have enough money to really be set for the rest of their lives. And to me, that's a good father and honestly, a very smart businessman. Now, this video is not about LeVar Ball or even the Ball family. It's about Lamelo specifically and why he is the future of the Charlotte Hornets. Now, despite Lamelo Ball being a top 3 pick in the draft, Charlotte has not done a good enough job trying to develop him to his highest ceiling because this year to start off, guys like Gordon Hayward are trying to get their own shots and they're looking off a open Lamelo Ball in the corner or just spying up in general outside the arc and the half-court offense. And that didn't help him at all as he's a 19-year-old rookie trying to establish some sort of rhythm in the NBA, and he almost always finds himself in the game with Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham. And despite him having to play off-ball a lot, whenever he does get the ball in his hands, he always gets some open opportunities. However, Lamelo is easily most effective in games when he's in the game with Malik Monk and Miles Bridges. With those two players, he fits very well in because Malik Monk is a more natural shooting guard. He can shoot the 3 ball with the best of them, and on top of that, Miles Bridges and Lamelo Ball have a great connection, not only in the transition offense, but in the half court as well. And after they drafted Miles Bridges, not long after, they signed Gordon Hayward, who is the same exact position, so it goes to show they have no faith in him or Malik Monk either, but despite that, Lamelo Ball has done a good enough job this year, helping to elevate those two guys' games so they could possibly get themselves a second contract with the Hornets. So for the first 19 games of the season, Lamelo Ball came off the bench, which was very bizarre to most people because he was deserving enough to start and he was outperforming Devontae Graham and arguably in some games Terry Rozier as well. Even though one of his biggest criticisms going into the draft was his lack of shooting, so far in the stretch of 6 games they started in, not only has he gotten 23 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds, he's been shooting 53% from 3 on 7 attempts per game, which is insane. And if you're saying that's too small of a sample size, I get it, that's fine. This year he's shooting 36% from 3, which is higher than some of the best shooters in the league, including Devin Booker, Davis Bertans, and Bradley Beal. And now you could say those guys take more threes than him. Sure, that is true, but he's also a rookie 19-year-old, while those guys are pretty much fully developed in the NBA, and they are all-star level players. Not really Davis Bertans, but he is a top shooter in the NBA. And what's crazy about this entire situation is that he should be shooting way better right now. James Borrego plays Lamelo Ball sporadically, so he'll play him for 5 or 6 minute stretches, and toward the end of that stretch, while Lamelo Ball is starting to heat up and hit shots, he'll yank him out the game and throw back in Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier. And that makes no sense because Lamelo Ball is a way better defender than the two of them, and while he is a more raw defender, he is still the more gifted and he provides a lot more. Not to mention the fact that those two guys, definitely not Devontae Graham, closer to my height than he is 6'1", he's probably about 5'11", and you put him in the game with Terry Rozier, who's 6'1", that is a nightmare. But you have Lamelo Ball now on the bench, who was just shooting very well a few minutes ago, and he is 6'8", so he could definitely hang with a team like the Celtics if they try to switch Jaylen Brown onto Devontae Graham. The Hornets don't have to worry about that mismatch no longer. And on top of that, offensively, he's shooting a higher percentage this year than Devontae Graham, which tells you a lot, because while Devontae Graham is a better shooter, he takes a higher percentage of his shots from 3. Lamelo Ball is still shooting better than him this year at the one attribute that people consider Devontae to be better than him at. Now, earlier in the year, people were calling him a bust. After his first game where he played 15 minutes, he had 0 points, a few turnovers, and people were calling him out for just trying to make flashy passes, but not actually having an impact on the game. 20 games later, he is playing on an all-star caliber level, and it makes many people question, what is going on in Charlotte? Because why did Lamelo Ball not start soon enough? Let me tell you why. James Borrego, and this is a little bit bizarre, but he has some sort of fetish with Devontae Graham, because Devontae Graham's been a guy who's been through thick and thin with James Borrego and the Hornets. The same exact thing can be said with the Martin twins, which is why those guys all get more minutes than they should be. Devontae Graham this year is getting over 30 minutes a game, around 33, 34, and that is definitely way too high for a player like Devontae Graham, because his actual value is a 6-man, probably getting 26 minutes a game. Meanwhile, the Martin brothers probably shouldn't be getting minutes on any NBA team. And now Now, you'd think if Devontae Graham's getting 34 minutes a game that Lamelo Ball would probably be playing just as much. You're wrong, because he on the year is only averaging 27 minutes a game, but before this recent stretch of games, he was playing less than 25. Lamelo Ball is the better player when compared to Devontae Graham and even Terry Rozier. While Terry Rozier may be scoring more points per game this year, Lamelo Ball has had a far bigger impact on offense, which is what makes the situation very bizarre, because James Borrego this year came out and said that Devontae Graham was great for them last season, not to mention the fact that he's playing on a contract year, so that gives him an incentive to play him more. If you're the Hornets, and the Hornets this year are trying to make the playoffs, why would you be playing a player based off of last year's performance when it's a new year? And number two, why would you be playing a player based off of their future and them trying to prove themselves? And the craziest part about this entire situation is that LaMelo's main part of his game is not scoring. Yet, in this recent stretch of games where he's been playing a lot more, he is averaging 9 more points per game than Devontae Graham is in the entire year, which goes to show that he is easily the better player between these two guys. And this year, the Hornets are in the middle of the pack in terms of pace, but I do think Lamelo Ball, they could get into the top 10 and they could be one of the best offenses in the NBA. And now, if you don't fully believe the numbers, that's fine, because numbers are great, but they don't tell the full story. Let's get into some of the matchups he's had this year against some of the league's best point guards. We'll start with Luka Doncic, because the first time they played the Dallas Mavericks, Lamelo Ball easily outplayed Luka Doncic. He was doing a better job than him defensively, he scored more and created for himself and others more often, and was more efficient while doing so. Now, the second time they played the Mavericks, they lost by 11. Lamelo Ball in that game played less than 25 minutes, and on the other hand, Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier played over 30. They're less efficient than he was, and they're turning over the ball a good amount as well. So you're thinking that game actually played the Mavericks the first time and won, with Lamelo Ball leading the way. The second time, they would play him just as much. However, James Borrego played him sporadically, and because of that, Lamelo Ball had no rhythm, which is what I would attribute to him not shooting well in that game. Surprisingly, Luka went off, and if you're wondering why, it was because Devontae Graham, one of the Martin twins, I don't know which one's which, and Terry Rozier are all guarding him. And now none of those guys are great defenders. The Martin twins are a little bit different, but those two guards in the backcourt are liabilities with their size, and Luka really took it to them because of it. And that's why I thought in that game Lamelo Ball would be perfect for them, because he would add a ton of size and athleticism that they kind of lack in their starting backcourt. But instead, James Borrego had other plans. Then maybe that's not a great example, because that was only one game. So we'll compare their two games versus the Hawks and Trae Young. So against the Hawks this year, the first time they played them, very early in the year, one of LaMelo's first games in the NBA, in just 23 minutes, he had 13 points and 8 assists, which is great. And now, since he only played 23 minutes in that game, he didn't get to have too big of an impact, and they would play the Hawks a few days later. In that game, they played LaMelo Ball a lot more, and as a result, he broke the record for becoming the youngest player ever to record a triple-double. James Borrego in that game let him play for longer stretches, and because of that, Lamelo Ball was able to get more of an offensive rhythm and a feel for the game. Now, correlation doesn't always imply causation, so we'll look at some of the recent games that the Hornets have had with Devontae Graham being out, the two most recent games. In those two games, Lamelo Ball has started, and he has played terrifically, including last night, which I'll get to in 1 second. But in those two games, they won both games by 20 points. They beat the Wizards and the Rockets, and while they were without some of the best players, those are two very competitive teams nonetheless. So the Hornets being able to blow those teams out goes to show Lamelo Ball this year has played much better in games where he had a bigger responsibility, where he was getting more minutes, because he had more of a rhythm, and because of that, he shot better. And last night in the Hornet game, he hit 7 threes. So low average shooters don't just out of nowhere shoot 54% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. That is not a coincidence. And now, if you're the Hornets here, what do you have to lose? More games? Because if you're the Hornets and you lose more games, that means you put yourself in a position to get Evan Mobley, one of the most versatile big men we've seen in quite some time out of the draft, and they have a glaring hole at center which they could certainly use an upgrade at. Cody Zeller can't really move his feet too well. Why not? And with that being said, if Lamelo Ball can keep up the play to some degree that he's had in these most recent games, he'll easily win the Rookie of the Year award, because he's going to get the Hornets into the playoffs. And now many people may say, oh, he's going to get cocky. I don't necessarily agree with you, because this year his personality and his actual intangible traits have been on full display, because he has been a great teammate, not to mention the fact that he has shown so much respect to James Borrego, and he's been so willing to learn, despite James Borrego not putting him in a good situation to improve. He really hasn't done a good job whatsoever in developing any of these young guys, not just him, but Malik Monk, PJ Washington, and Miles Bridges. All these guys are lottery picks. And lastly, despite how he's playing, he will always have the same attitude. It doesn't matter if he has a 30-point triple-double or if he has 4 points, because he's going to give you the same energy and intensity that he did the game before. Now, you don't have to like Lamelo Ball. As a matter of fact, somebody commented on one of my posts yesterday that Lamelo Ball couldn't shoot. I responded, Now, Lamelo Ball won't just be the Hornets' best player in terms of impact or even their knight in shining armor. He will be the reason why the Hornets don't fall into the deep end.